my name is Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. It is the day. This is the list. I am so excited to talk about this list with you. I did a list of 20 cult films, which I'm also fascinated with cult obsession. So I'm kind of sticking to the same idea where, of course, I included the guilty pleasures that I absolutely love, being a big fan of these kind of films, but I also wanted to include things from different perspectives. So I've tried to include as many different ones, as well as there's a couple of cookie cutter ones, I have to say, but as many different ones as possible. This does not just count as love obsession, it's also revenge, and my favorite subgenre, which I'm sure you guys can guess what film I'm talking about, stalker movies where they want to become someone. I love those. I did not rank this list because I do find it really hard, because half of these are guilty pleasures that I absolutely love and the other half are amazing films that I absolutely love. So it's really hard for me to rank for you guys, but I did cut it down to 20 because I'm not into filling up lists just for the sake of it. I could give you 20 more, and in fact I will. Down in the description I have left 20 more for you, but these are my favorite ones and the ones I highly recommend if you like stalker films. Bonus points will go to anyone who can figure out why I put the list in this particular order. I'll be waiting for those comments down below when you guys catch on to what I'm doing. But let's jump into the list. My name is Emma. I'm also known as Spookyastronauts here on YouTube, and I make 2 new videos every single week about thrillers and horrors. Anything dark and creepy and spooky, I'm here for it. Please subscribe. I'm an avid stalker fan. So let's jump into this list and let's start with one of the best stalker films I think there is, that is kind of a guilty pleasure but just fits the mold so perfectly, and that is Fear from 1996. I had to kick off with this guilty pleasure. Reese Witherspoon and Mark Wahlberg star in this teen thriller about a seriously toxic relationship. Wahlberg plays David, who becomes obsessed with sweet, quiet Nicole. But when Nicole refuses to submit to abusive behavior, the relationship turns from love to fear, ending in some killer consequences. When I first saw this movie, I thought it was going to be really tame and really cheesy, but it's actually pretty violent and pretty intense. So I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Next, let's talk about Play Misty for Me. Directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Eastwood and Jessica Walter. This is one wild ride. Play Misty for Me is about a radio DJ who is loved by his audience, but when an obsessive fan meets him in person, things take a turn for the worst. You need to see this film if you've missed it, especially for Jessica Walter. She is batshit. Let's talk about Greta from 2015. This one is a unique angle on the stalker obsession story, as it's a found footage horror film. Ashley Benson plays Emma, a girl who has moved into her own home to prove her independence, but is watched via her laptop and phone cameras, even when she thinks they're switched off. I'm gonna level with you, the story isn't all there for this one, but I do think it's a unique angle and look at the situation, and it definitely made me question who has control over my technology. But the next film takes the cake. It is what stalker films are all about. It is single white female. It's creepy how excited I am about this list, I have to say. I completely am aware of it. This film is an absolute classic. The film is based on the novel SWF Seek Same by John Lutz, and it coined the term single white female, which is now synonymous with stalking and obsession of wanting to become someone. Starring Bridget Fonda and the lovely Jennifer Jason Leigh, the film is about Allison, a woman who seeks a roommate, but when seemingly harmless Meek Hendra moves in, she soon starts acting strange and becomes obsessed with every aspect of Allison's life. The next film we have to talk about is 1 Hour Photo. Who could forget this chilling performance by the late Robin Williams? 1 Hour Photo is about Sai, a photo developer who becomes obsessed with a family after years of seeing their photos. Sai secretly makes copies of the pictures and fantasizes about his role in their family. But if that wasn't bad enough, when something goes against his narrative, he will do anything to get back the picture-perfect family. This is such a thrilling film and a very unique spin on the stalker narrative. The next movie I want to talk about is The Fan. But I do want to say, I did watch The Fan, and I know about The Fan. I think The Fan is a very cookie cutter film. I've watched it twice, forgetting that I'd seen it the first time. I was very disappointed with The Fan because Robert De Niro is one of my favorite actors, and that movie is just a mess, a giant mess, and I really wanted to put on this list, but I just couldn't do it to you guys. But what film I am a fan of is Der Fan. Just had to clear that up. Arthouse German horror The Fan is a bizarre trip that you won't forget. In this film, young Simone worships pop singer R, and she'll do anything to get close to him, but keeping him is another story. You just need to see this one because it has one of the most shocking stalker scenes in a film. I was completely taken by surprise. This film is unpredictable in the best way possible. You know I can't stop singing the praises of this next film. It's UNSANE from 2018. This is one of my favorite films from 2018, and it was directed by Steven Soderbergh and filmed entirely on a phone. UNSANE is the story about Sawyer, a woman who is dealing with the trauma of being stalked by an obsessive man. Starring Claire Foy, Joshua Leonard, and Juno Temple, the film is a raw look at psychological damage harassment has on the survivor. This next film I love because it takes the stereotype of French romance to a whole new level. We're talking about He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not. This film follows a woman who is obsessed with a married man, and it tells the story through her eyes as she struggles to get him to leave his wife. The film is pretty predictable, but it's an interesting look at the other side of the story. The next film I want to talk about is Fade to Black. This is the tragic story about geeky loner Eric, who is a hardcore movie fanatic. Fade to Black is about Eric's revenge against all those who have wronged him and his unhealthy obsession with a Marilyn Monroe lookalike that pushes him over the edge. As you can imagine, this film has a lot of film and horror references, but the realistic side of the film leaves you feeling pity for Eric, which is an interesting outcome given his behavior. Don't worry guys, it's time for another cookie cutter film, and one I have watched probably 20 times. I hate admitting that, is SWIMFAN. SWIMFAN from 2002 is a huge guilty pleasure of mine. This one follows the stock standard storyline, but the obsession in this one is dangerously thrilling. The film follows Ben, a high school senior who has a one-night stand with Madison, but Madison wants more, and when Ben refuses her, she begins stalking him and messing with everyone close to him. This next one, I am not afraid to admit, is a classic horror film that I slept on for a long time, and I'm so glad it made the list. It's The Hitcher. The Hitcher is a classic horror action thriller, and one you may not group with stalkers and obsession, but the film's antagonist obsession with the main character is something totally bizarre and beyond deadly. Starring Rutger Hauer, C. Thomas Howell, and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Again, the story starts as a troublesome near miss for Jim, who picks up a psychotic hitchhiker, but soon it becomes a dangerous game of cat and mouse when the hitchhiker continues to stalk Jim, destroying his identity and his sanity. Okay guys, I couldn't do a video about stalkers and obsession and not talk about the #1 fan, stalker, Annie Wilkes. Misery is a Stephen King book that was adapted to movie in 1990. Directed by Rob Reiner, the film stars Kathy Bates and James Caan. The film is about a famous author who was rescued from a snowstorm by his #1 fan. His fan then holds him hostage in her home, forcing him to rewrite his latest book to her liking. The film is thrilling and tense due to the obsessive yet unpredictable nature of Annie. I had to include an indie creepy ass gem in this list, and that is Be My Cat. The film centers around a Romanian filmmaker who is obsessed with the actress Anne Hathaway, and he goes to shocking extremes to get her attention. The film is a raw and gritty found footage that spirals out of control. You feel like you're watching a real descent into madness. This film differs from many of the others on this list because it's an obsession from afar, but it doesn't make it any less terrifying. The one you've all been waiting for, the next film we're going to talk about, is Fatal Attraction. Fatal Attraction does for adultery what Dare does for drugs. This thriller starring Michael Douglas and a terrifying Glenn Close is about a man who has an affair with a colleague. But when he returns to his family, she just can't let go, leading to violent and disturbing consequences. Glenn Close is absolutely terrifying in this role, a real bunny boiler, you could say. Next, Cape Fear. It just had to make this list. Directed by Martin Scorsese, this 90s remake of a 60s film by the same name is intense to say the least. The movie stars Robert De Niro, Nick Nolte, Jessica Lange, and Juliette Lewis. De Niro plays Max Cady, a man set to stalk a family and take revenge for what he sees as an injustice that stole 14 years of his life. The film, although seen as a revenge flick, is tied together by some extreme stalking and brewing obsession. The movie crosses many lines, including grooming scenes involving De Niro and Lewis's character, who is only 16 years old. Cape Fear is highly disturbing and possibly the most bloody film on this list. Next, let's talk about The Crush. Quintessential 90s viewing. Alicia Silverstone may be coming into her own recently, as we've seen her play the role of a couple of unhinged characters lately. But did you know in 1993 she won the MTV Movie Award for Best Villain and Best Breakthrough Performance in her first performance in a film for her role in The Crush. The film takes a twisted look at obsession as a 14-year-old girl sets her sights on a journalist. But when he refuses her, she sets out to stalk and destroy his life. An interesting fact about this film is Silverstone's character's name was actually changed when the film was edited for TV. This was because the movie was written based on true events that had happened to the person who wrote it. But it's actually illegal to use their name because of what happened around this circumstance, so they had to dub the name over the top, which is bizarre but a complete oversight. Let's get back into the horror world and let's talk about one of my favorite found footage films of all time, Creep. Don't misunderstand this horror thriller. Although it's about a creepy man, the film is a giant game of cat and mouse, which includes a case of severe stalking. Written, directed, and starring Patrick Bryce, the film follows Aaron, who attends an ad for a one-day videography job. The job was placed by Joseph, who was played by Mark Duplass. He is a strange man who requests Aaron to film his last messages to the world. But of course, Joseph isn't what he seems. As I said, this one is one of my favorite found footage horror films of all time. It's a crazy roller coaster which takes stalking to a whole new level. Speaking of a whole new level, this next film is so important because it sometimes gets categorized under comedy and I don't think people take it seriously enough, but it is a serious look at what's happening in the digital age of stalking. Ingrid Goes West is an amazing film. The reason I keep rewatching this film isn't just to do with the stalking aspect, but also to do with the great message behind the film. Starring Aubrey Plaza and Elizabeth Olsen, the film is about a lonely woman who tries to befriend a social media influencer and ends up in a tangle of lies. This next film I highly recommend to everyone, even if you don't like stalker films. If you have not seen this film, you are missing out. It is probably by far the best made film on this list. I hate saying that. I know Cape Fear's on here, but oh my gosh, I rewatched it before I did this list because I really wanted to remember everything that happened. And it is so intense and disturbing. Oh gosh, you need to watch The Gift. This film does contain some twists, but at its core, it's a story of obsession of the past. And of course, some extreme and threatening stalking thrown in there. Joel Edgerton writes, directs, and stars in this film that also stars Jason Bateman and Rebecca Hall. This film is so well constructed and it's a slow descent into danger, where the warning signs are pretty unnerving, but it's the truth at the end that takes the gut punch. The film is about a young married couples whose lives are thrown into a tailspin when an acquaintance from the past returns. We're at 20. Can you believe it? I have to finish off with a cookie cutter. I'm sorry. I need that guilty pleasure. Have you got any more of that SWF? I need it. Let's talk about The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. This 90s classic thriller stars Rebecca De Mornay as psychotic Peyton, a woman who has lost it all and sets out for revenge. She does so by infiltrating the family she wants to destroy. This movie is about obsession at its worst. In fact, Peyton reminds me of an older Poison Ivy, which is a reminder that I have left an extra 20 down in the description box, so definitely check them out. I don't think that they're as good as my first 20, but they're there if you need them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite stalker film is. Of course, I could only include 20, so I didn't forget your favorites, just sometimes I don't have enough room. Otherwise, we could be here all day, which some of you guys probably would like, you sickos. Let me know what your favorite stalker film is down below, and let me know if you have an obsession with stalker films like me, because if you do, can you let me know what's wrong with us? I don't understand the psychology behind this. Maybe I don't wanna. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did find it helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget, I do 2 videos every single week. You should subscribe. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.